Good day. We are Group 3 of S24D presenting our take on game theory and its application on Russia versus the West. Hi, I'm Evan Marie de Guzman.
I'm Carlos Reyes.
I'm Harmony Clardy.
I'm Joseph Enriquez.
And I'm Giancarlo Flores.
Again, we are Group 3 of S24D. Anyway, let's start with the summary.
So let's talk about the summary of analysis presented in the video. I'm sure everyone has at least heard about the recent conflict between Russia and Ukraine and how the West is trying to mitigate this problem. We all know that the outcome of this game could lead to two things. Will the conflict escalate or will it lead to a settlement? But in order to know that, we need to know that there are two players in this game. Player 1 is Putin and player 2 is the West. Both players can choose to take either of the two actions, to escalate the conflict or to de-escalate it. Now let's talk more about the game in extensive form. Putin made the first move, which is to have conflict with Ukraine, which escalated the conflict. So the West in response chose to impose sanctions and give military aid to Ukraine, meaning that they chose to escalate the conflict as well, as if they chose not to, then Putin would win. Putin has no choice but to keep escalating the conflict till there is war to ensure military victory. After all, he started the war. So his next move is to escalate the conflict further, but in turn, Russia loses its standing. The West responds in continuing to make more sanctions and aid to Ukraine. They chose to de-escalate the war because Ukraine isn't part of the NATO. And if they escalated the conflict, then it would lead to World War III. Putin continues to escalate the conflict and would eventually so face global isolation if they keep up. But Putin would keep choosing to escalate the conflict all the way to secure victory. The West can only choose to de-escalate and provide aid and impose sanctions so as not to lead to World War III. Perhaps the West may have to accept Putin's victory so that there will be no more bloodshed and that they would reach a settlement. But the West will make sure that Russia will suffer the most severe sanctions. While Putin could win the war, he could also retreat under pressure.
Thank you, Harmony, for the explanation of the extensive form and the summary of the analysis. So anyway, let's start with our own interpretation and point of view on the video analysis, and let's react to each other. Anyway, my interpretation analysis for the Russia versus the West in game theory mechanics is that both Russia and the West have always two moves to make at a time. Both are in some form of game, but as much as the video analysis does not want to acknowledge it, the stakes are too much. Lives are on the line, and as much as we want to consider it in game theory mechanics, the objectivity of game theory and its definitions do not apply to such a cruel game.
I also agree. For me, I interpreted the analysis as a constant back and forth between the two players, Russia and the West. The analysis provides a very detailed understanding of the players' choices and the consequences they bring. This is also a very general and simple way to explain the different events occurring in the war between Russia and Ukraine.
So for me, my interpretation of the analysis video is similar to others. The argument between the West and Putin is a back and forth process. It's a process that someone may succeed or fail, similar to games. Also, each move and reaction from each side establishes a communication, although in a different manner. Furthermore, I found the analysis video related to making life decisions, wherein there must always be an option when making a move.
I'd have to agree with the rest of you, as my point of view on the analysis is pretty much the same. The analysis is very simple to understand, and we can see that both Putin and the West are forced to make decisions to align with their goals as well as minimize the consequences.
I abide by everyone's stance regarding the video, where it makes a great simple analysis on the options of Putin versus the West and the consequences within the chosen options, where the West is forced to make a move and a reaction to aid Ukraine in response to Putin's tyranny. However, one short video cannot explain the extent of this war and its consequences, such as the world economy, the flow of goods, and the livelihoods of many individuals.
All right. Thank you guys for those interpretations. I'm sorry to have disturbed, but Justin, the explanation, please, of how game theory is used in the analysis.
So for our explanation, similar to the concept of game theory, there are two players, which are Putin and the West, that compete with each other. It was shown in the video the possible outcomes and reaction to each other's moves, and the best and worst move between the two sides were indicated and explained in the video as well. Thus, it appears that Putin's actions are leading to negative results, while the West's reaction lead to favorable outcomes. That's all.
Thank you, Justin. So now let's start with our personal views of the current situation. So how we feel about the situation of Russia versus Ukraine, and what do you guys think as a nation can we possibly do to ease or lessen the negative effects of the war? So I'll start. I personally feel like this analysis of current situation of Russia versus Ukraine and the West is quite unironic. It's somehow making me feel uneasy that the situation is put the entire thing in retrospect and analogous with game theory mechanics. It makes me feel so due to the fact that other decisions could have been made by both sides. Could have been just two. There could have been plenty of decisions. Yet pride, ego, and other factors can contribute to the decision making. There's no number that can be equated to the decisions made and how good or bad they are for a certain side. And that itself is scary. That you can just have a number to define it. It just so happens that lives will be lost. As a nation, I'm not entirely sure on what to do to lessen the effects of the war for our people. In terms of Philippine-Russia international relations, this aspect may not be affected too much that it will crumble or fall. For the resources, though, I do believe that some resources will fall in some form of scarcity with high demand. An example is gas. The best thing to do is possibly make proper adjustments into pricing locally while finding other possible exporters.
For me, I guess I feel anxious for Ukraine. After all, they're kind of on their own, and they lose in terms of military power compared to Russia, despite the aid from the West. I personally just wish that the situation be resolved as quickly as possible and that there would be no more casualties. I think we could ease the negative effect of war is to ensure as much as possible not to engage in any political or military affairs with Russia or Ukraine. I think we always got to aim for peaceful negotiations that would not result in war.
So I honestly feel the same as the others. Knowing that Russia is one of the biggest countries, how can Putin risk his nation and people for bloodshed in relation with other countries? Also, given that Russia may fall into a pariah state or global isolation countries, similar to North Korea and Iran, if it continued to escalate the conflict with the other countries. Thus, it seems that Putin is being quite egoistical in this scenario because of the risk to win. So I agree to harmony. I also think that in order to ease the negative effect on our people, we must not engage in conflict with Russia and Ukraine so that our nation will not be involved in the occurring conflict.
I have to agree with what Evan said. Even though the video makes a good summary of what has happened so far within the war, it saddens me that the war has been the subject of our lessons while it hasn't even ended yet. It feels like I have studied these topics in history class before, yet quests for power that have drastic consequences on the livelihoods of people are still happening in the present. History keeps on repeating itself. In my opinion, our nation has already too much burden to deal with right now, such as politically and economically and medically. Gas prices have gone up due to the war, disrupting the flow of goods. So I believe that our nation should strive to make the lives of Filipino easier in the state of war, and ensure that we do not enter the war and put our nation in a more vulnerable position than it already is.
I agree with everyone on this matter. It's true that governments have a responsibility to protect the interests of their country. However, war should never be a solution to end the conflict. because it will ultimately result in the loss of lives and homes of the people. It's sad to see that despite seeing the horrors of past world wars, countries are still open to the idea of an all out war for their interests. In terms of a solution, I also agree with everyone on this matter. Even if we are not directly involved with the conflict, we will eventually be brought in if a world war truly occurs. As such, I believe that we should always strive for peaceful negotiations, but we should also be ready for the worst.
Okay, thank you guys for for the personal views of the situation. Yes, it's bad, but hey, there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Anyway, so last, this is a really last question. Okay, do you agree with the way the analysis was presented by the narrators? So just agreement to disagreement. Okay, for me, uh, while all decisions that they presented have some form of assumption, I do agree. I do agree with those. In my perspective, the points as to why these specific choices where the decisions are again debatable out of the reason of assumption, but in concluding each move with the reasoning of the choice is agreeable beyond reasonable doubt.
Well, for me, I agree. I mean, what he explained in the analysis is exactly what is occurring between Russia and the West. Perhaps it's not the exact move that each party may have played, but it's practically similar from what I understood when I heard the news.
I agree. It was actually somehow an efficient way to include a summary of contemporary events in our lessons. However, it does not include every factor or consequence that had taken place after drastic decisions were made by both parties.
I also agree. I believe that the video was presented to be very simple and very general, so that people who have no general knowledge on the Ukraine versus Russia war can at least understand the choices that the countries are making.
Yes, I do agree with what the narrator presented. It seems that the analysis video was accurate enough to explain and describe how Putin acted towards the public and also the public.
Okay, thank you guys for those. Yeah, so all in all, we agree with how good the video analysis was and how the narrative presented it. Okay, so I guess we can all cut it here, right? Okay, so again, we're group 3 of S24D, and thank you so much for listening. And we do hope that this has raised awareness to everyone listening to the reality of the situation in Russia versus the West and how it's affecting the world. Uh, Again, be thankful every day and goodbye.